to Recollections May Vary, a royal recap. I'm Kinsey Schofield here with Maureen Callahan, host of The Nerve with Maureen Callahan. Maureen, what are you doing this week? What can we look forward to this week on The Nerve?
In the episode that dropped on Tuesday morning, I surgically took apart one scourge known as Bill Maher,
Oh,
who went on his HBO show on Friday night to use the Diddy trial to talk about how abused women have only themselves to blame. And, they're probably just trying to get like fame or money or something like that. So they're happily sort of taking these beatings and then turning like I could not make this shit up. So we took him and the premiere episode, among other things, of And Just Like That, which was a horror show. Then we take that apart too.
oh my gosh, the truth. Saw you with Bill from Brooklyn talking about Val Kilmer. It really meant I felt my heart
Oh, you felt
melted.
seen. Did you feel like, seen? I mean, I'm Your Huckleberry, and it is top of my list to get to.
I love that. So we're just talking about books. I'm reading a book, Once Upon a Time, about Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy right now. You mentioned Carolyn in your book a lot, but you're not in your Kennedy book. You're definitely sympathetic towards her, and you talk about how the Kennedys kind of bullied her family after her death, right? And ask
Oh,
not.
yes. Oh, they were brutal to the family. I mean, again, this mother, Anne Freeman, who lost two of her three daughters. So Carolyn and her sister Lauren, who was only about a year older and was a twin. So the
Yeah.
surviving sibling is also a twin. She was called to this meeting with who she thought was going to be Caroline Kennedy, and Caroline couldn't or wouldn't be bothered to go. So she sends her husband Ed, who hated Carolyn. I think probably wanted to have sex with Carolyn and felt very beta male about the whole thing. And this guy, according to Robert F. Kennedy's diaries, which I've seen, the New York Post published them, quote, I will never forget these words: bullied, bullied, bullied the shattered, grieving mother. And the Carolyn that existed in the book you're talking about, Once Upon a Fairy Tale, is
Oh,
that
wait,
what's
I
called?
think you're right. Let me look. Let me confirm. Let me open up this thing. I'm only like 20 hours into this very long audio book.
Ooh.
Um, it's Once Upon a Time, and it is by Elizabeth Beller.
So I tried to read that because that book came out a couple of
Around
months before
yours.
Ask Not,
Yeah.
right? And I was interested to see her Carolyn is faultless. Like I think she's coming at it from far too much of a place, frankly, of fandom. You really have to like writing Ask Not, I'm clearly a fan of Jacqueline Kennedy, but I really, really tried to get below the sediment there in ways other biographers hadn't.
Wait, by the way, have
Say
you heard that she did not like Princess Diana, Jackie O? Have you heard that too?
what I heard is that when she was working at it was either Doubleday or Viking, she was, she went her fourth incarnation was as a book publisher. Much like Meghan Markle's trying to reincarnate and reincarnate. Jackie O did it first and did it best, okay?
Yeah.
She was the real deal. And she understood that she was a passport and she had entry into all of these worlds and access to all of these people that these publishers wanted to court in hopes that they would write a memoir, Princess Diana being one of them. I think Jackie knew there wasn't a lot of depth there, and she didn't think, it's a short life. Diana was maybe in her mid 30s, but she got on the plane and Diana turned her down.
Well, so what I heard is that Jackie did not appreciate the way that Diana complained about her life. Having lost her husband, having been through so much trauma, Jackie was always stiff upper lip, look graceful, focus on, the positive, and
Mhm.
just raise your children to be good humans. And
Yes.
that's what I heard, that she was unimpressed with the way that Diana complained about her life. And God knows what she would have said about Meghan Markle. But we were talking about Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy too, and how much I think I see Meghan trying to emulate Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy. And for me specifically, sometimes it's in clothing, but Carolyn could have been a model. She didn't want to be a model. She could have been a model. She had a model figure. And she was an effortless cool that Meghan in her oversized beige that needs an ironing just does not manage to capture.
This is such a great talking point. I could go on all day about this. So, first of all, if JFK Jr. hadn't killed himself and his wife and her sister, and I theorize it was a murder suicide.
You've got to explain yourself.
So, his life was falling apart. The owners of his failing magazine, George, had made it clear to him they were dropping it. And he was busy trying to shop it to any publisher that would take a meeting with him, and nobody wanted it. It was unreadable. It was dull. It was boring. It was kind of like him. Like it had a pretty face, but there was like nothing going on in there. His wife was like, had kicked him out of the bedroom. He was living in a hotel and they were on the brink of divorce. Another personal failing that would have been a humiliation for him. The most eligible man on the planet, the most wanted man on the planet. Thirdly, his own sister wasn't speaking to him over selling Jackie O's estate, like all of her belongings after she died, which she told them to do. She said, "Sell all my stuff. You'll make a ton of money." He didn't want to do it. She did it. They did whatever. And then he griped. He went into the office and had the temerity to gripe to his low-paid staff. Like, I only got 100 grand out of Sotheby's when that whole was done. So this is who we're dealing with. Again, I don't know whether he was dialed into this wish or not, but like he was told and warned by multiple pilots on that tarmac, do not go up.
Yeah.
I'm not going up tonight. It is too foggy and dangerous. He was not instrument rated. He turned down an instructor who said, "I will go up with you." He was hobbling around on
Somebody said
crutches.
I would take a somebody said I would wait and he said no chance.
Not a chance, because
Yeah.
he's a Kennedy and he's
Yeah.
gonna, and he had this death wish, like, and he always, it's in the book, like he would always take the women in his life with him and risk their lives too. I mean, he almost killed a former girlfriend multiple times doing this shit, like really stupid, stupid stuff. So but to circle back to the top thing you just said, if JFK Jr. were still alive, he would be in Meghan Markle's crosshairs.
Yeah.
He'd be
For
on his like third marriage by now. He would be in her crosshairs. If Jackie were still alive, Jackie would have read this woman from a mile away, just like Queen Elizabeth. These are seasoned, savvy women. Even when Jack was alive and they were in the White House, he would say, and all of his advisors would say, like, Jackie can read people like nobody else. She could spot a phony, a hustler, a self-aggrandizer, a glommer, if you will. So Meghan tries, and the thing with Meghan is you can always let's turn, as Meghan would, a verb into a noun. You can
okay.
always see the try with Meghan.
That is so true. That is so true. Well, what about JFK and Prince Harry? Because he had to find his own path. His mom, he wanted
Mhm.
to be an actor. His mom wanted him to be an attorney, but also was quietly telling people she just knew one day he would be president. The Democratic Party wanted him to be president. I think that there were much more expectations with JFK. He builds George because he's trying to find somewhere in the middle. They asked Princess Diana to be the first on the first cover,
That's
which turns out
right.
to be Cindy Crawford. Diana would have been great. I think she understood that it didn't make any sense though. It would have just been a great marketing get for JFK. Do you think that you can compare the two? I want to try, but at the same time, I know that JFK Jr. was lost a little bit, but I feel like Harry's really lost because there are less expectations for him.
Kinsey, this is a fascinating comparison, and I think the key difference is social media, which did not exist in JFK Jr.'s lifetime. And he had a media that was in thrall to him. I mean, he was in New York, the tabloids, they loved this guy. He loved fame and he loved being famous, and he wore it with a kind of casual sort of elan, and it felt very natural to him. He was often talked about as a future president, and God help us had he been, because again, like Harry, there's not a lot going on between those ears. So JFK Jr., was able to keep up until his death. I do think this was a precipitating factor in his untimely death. Like he knew deep down, like he didn't have a lot of substance. He didn't have a lot of intellect. He didn't really have a great sense of humor. He was just this sort of indulged, entitled, overgrown kind of brat. His best friends would be like, that's the deal. You want to hang with him? You got to indulge everything. He never heard the word no,
Ugh.
and there are a lot of similarities with Harry. The difference being now with social media and these sort of unmediated parasocial relationships we now have with celebrities, we can see a lot more behind the veneer. They had constructed such a well-oiled, like professional and personal artifice for him. And he had an identity. He was the roguish younger brother, the cheeky prince who could be a little bit more freewheeling because he didn't have the throne, hanging over his head. He's purely animated, it seems to me, just my opinion, by rage and by jealousy.
Yeah, I agree with you. Uh, there's also the fact that, I mean, I think if social media would have existed at the time, I wonder if JFK Jr.'s star would have fizzled a little bit, because we've seen that shift in like, now it's not movie star, TV star, political star. Now it's just like influencer. I mean, 3 million people might know who this person is, but I cannot
Right.
recognize that person at Coachella. So I wonder if
Right.
social media would have dimmed that light a little bit. And with Harry and Meghan, I think it's elevated them. But I know that that they're discouraged by the comments that they see their critics say online, because God knows that's their place that they sit and stew. I'm sure that they did not like some of my comments this week about the Daily Mail report that Prince Harry approached Earl Spencer, Princess Diana's brother, at his Althorpe estate when I think it was probably the last time he visited the UK, we suspect, because I do know he went to visit his mother's grave, and
Hmm.
said, "What do you think about me taking on the last name Spencer?" Now everybody's like, this is the ultimate swipe at his family. I think it's more than that. I think it's this obsession Harry and Meghan have with being compared to Princess Diana. They
Hmm.
see that this is an opportunity for them to monetize her popularity and everybody's love for her, which is just not going to go away.
I'm loath to always blame the woman in these scenarios as sort of the animating factor, but here I think it was Meghan. I think this was her idea. I don't think Harry generates many original ideas. We're dealing with like a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think it was her idea because I think was it you who said this? I think in an email to me, it's sort of like then the daughter Lilibet becomes Lilibet Diana Spencer.
Yeah.
And now we're getting into the part of the alien movie where the alien subsumes the host. And Meghan is trying to subsume the dead host that is Princess Diana.
It's so gross. It's so gross. And she says, I never Googled him. I don't know anything about the family. But if you talk to Andrew Morton, he talked to friends of Meghan who said his book, Diana, Her True Story, was on Meghan's bookshelf when she was a little girl.
If you're telling me that wasn't Meghan Markle's Bible, and that Meghan Markle, as we have heard, had a vision board. And Harry was allegedly on it. Now, if you go into other corners of like Reddit, there is a lot of theorizing that she really was using Harry as a Trojan horse to get to William,
Mm.
and that she thought that with her beauty, her charm, her American sauciness, her Californian carefree attitude, she would lure William away from Catherine, and she would join him in ruling the British Empire. And those fears were dashed, and now we're making jam in Montecito, allegedly. I mean.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because remember, it's Tom Quinn's story that said she was a little too touchy-feely for William, that he didn't
Mhm.
understand why she needed to hug and kiss every time she saw him. And even courtiers were like, there were rumors that the courtiers were like, wow, she's awfully affectionate towards Prince William. And it was ticking Prince Harry off. So I can see that too. And, another thing is, of course, Earl Spencer discourages this and says there's too many legal loopholes you're going to have to jump through if you try to do this. But if you read Tom Bower's Revenge, Bower says like the Spencers were not impressed with Meghan whatsoever. Prince Harry introduces Meghan to Diana's sisters and Earl Spencer. Earl Spencer is already discouraging him from marrying her. He thinks it's too soon. And Prince Harry's like, doesn't she remind you of mom? Doesn't she remind you of mom? And they're all like, absolutely not. Not a single thing about this woman reminds us of your mother. And that disappointed him. But they also warn him, we don't think she's going to fit into the British royal family. I mean, hello, red flag. How many? How many were there, Harry? But it's almost like the Spencers don't want to claim her either.
Oh no, nobody wants to claim her. Nobody wants to claim her. And it's interesting the I remember reading that part of Tom Bower's book and thinking like it must be really bad if the Spencers allowed that biographer, they gave him that piece of information. That's just a taste of what they really talk about behind the scenes. Because that's a very, very vicious bit of information to allow to be in the pages of a book and for people to talk about. And it was a very similar thing too with JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. Now, Jackie had died. Um, again, there are some parallels. And Carolyn reminded a lot of people theorized that part of his attraction to her was she had a Jackie Kennedy-esque quality of being quite aloof
Mm.
and mysterious. And that was something that Carolyn actively cultivated. She knew that the way to get to this guy who could have anybody he wanted was to appear to be the woman that he could not get so easily. And Markle, again, I think we talked about this the last time. Like, remember the Netflix doc, the first one? She's talking about their origin story and how, they were secretly flying back and forth, but all of the notes that she kept, because she kept everything, she kept everything. We're saving it for the divorce memoir and the divorce Netflix special, which, again, Redditors have knocked it into my head. Oh, that's why Netflix keeps renewing her. They're keeping her on the payroll for the inevitable divorce special.
Right.
Um, it was her, it was Meghan who was actually working a job. She wasn't mining coal, but she had a TV show, who was the one always flying to London, M to London, M to London, M to London. Like, and this jobless layabout is sitting there letting her fly back and forth and rack up frequent flyer miles. Again, lazy, lazy, lazy.
Yeah, yeah. But that's not hard to get. I mean, she did threaten to break up with him, but if you're like getting on a plane for 5 to 6 hours, that is you're making it a little easy. I mean, what do I know? I obviously am not with a prince, but uh
Honestly, Kinsey, I think she was flying from the West Coast, which would have made it like a 10-hour flight.
oh my gosh. So when it comes to the Spencer last name, do you think if Harry had done that, that would have done anything positive for, I feel like we're constantly talking about the rebrand, the rebrand, the rebrand. This would have been yet another rebrand. Would it have done anything positive for these two? Are there some schleps out there that would have fallen for this?
Probably. I mean, she
Oh,
does have her fans,
oh my God.
but it's like Meghan can try on as many names. She went from Meghan Markle to Meghan Sussex, and that belly flopped hard. And she's pulled back on that. Now she's Meghan Markle again, or just Meghan. She's just Meghan. I'm just Meghan. By the way, you and I'm dying to talk to you about this on your show because the first episode of that podcast, which was a really, really difficult listen, you could see they call them ad reads, which are like the host reading the ad, which pays the podcast more money. You get more money in ad revenue. You could tell these ads were written for Meghan to read aloud. It was like something like Jenny Kane or these brands that she's always making sure she's photographed in and we know how much money she's spending. And they were written in the first person. They were using the pronoun I. And there was an actress reading them because Meghan Markle, I think, clearly thinks, well, she can do a podcast, but she's not going to do a ad read. She's above an ad read. Okay.
Yeah.
She's a duchess. We're not doing ad reads on our podcast.
I think you're so right. And the way she could have balanced that out was she could have had some true sponsors, but then she could have read them, with her grinding her teeth through it. She could have read them.
Hmm.
Although ultimately, she just wants to be an influencer. It's not a tough job just to read about an ad. But then she could have, spaced it out with an ad that she's donated, for a cause that she cares about. So instead of us talking about, oh my gosh, Meghan Markle's doing commercials for whatever, we would also have to acknowledge that she's doing commercials for the Boys and Girls Club, and that's so great, or whatever. And then there's a charitable effort in it somewhere, but there's no charity in this stuff whatsoever, unless you consider giving Tina Knowles a little bit of press for a book I would rather die in a fire than read. Let's talk about this episode with Beyonce's mom. You took one for the team. You're honest. Today, you're the martyr, and we love you for it.
Thank
Did you
you. Thank you. I'm not just an astronaut. I'm a martyr. Thank you.
You're not just an astronaut. So is she basically just admitting that she can't secure Beyonce? I truly hated the way. What did she say? I'm so happy to be sitting down with you. So glad you reached out to me. That's just classic Meghan
Mm.
Markle. I am wanted. People want to talk to me. I am important.
It's so funny. So on the Nerve, we also did a segment on what a kind of friend that's called the underminer.
Mhm.
And we talked to this guy, Mike Albo, who's hilarious, and he wrote the book. It's called The Underminer. It's a comic novel. And the subtitle is Or the Best Friend Who Casually Destroys Your Life. And Meghan is nothing if not the ultimate underminer. Like she's knifing Beyonce's mom, okay? A momager who is like akin to, what she and her husband did to get Destiny's Child and Beyonce launched is like what Serena and Venus's father did to get those two launched into tennis stardom. It was like they were grinding it out from a very young age. But Megan's going to sit there, who on her Instagram post from like a couple of weeks ago was like, thanks to Beyonce and her team for a great night at a show. I'm wearing denim, by the way, in homage to Cowboy Carter,
Oh,
because
thank
I
you.
knew we were talking about this.
Yeah.
So, she's implying that Beyonce hooked her up with like VIP seats and the like, and there's no evidence.
Yeah.
She was not hosted by Beyonce. There are no pictures backstage. There's no, grinning madly from a VIP booth. Nothing,
No.
nothing. So she's
But
got.
she does do a shout out to Beyonce's publicist, who I guess is there with Tina. And to me, when she's like, "Oh, hi," the woman that's there with Tina, I was like, I bet that's who got her the tickets, not Beyonce.
Maybe it was like that. And if that's the best kind of mutual transaction you can get going with Beyonce's team, where you can't get to Beyonce, but you'll get the tickets and you can post about it if you have her mother on your flailing podcast, Confessions of a Female Flounder. Listening to this it was very hard because Tina Knowles does not come across as a particularly intelligent woman, you
Oh
know?
no.
And, nor does Megan, but Megan at least sort of sounds a little bit more professional, you
You.
know? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
she can elocute a little bit, like whatever acting classes she took got her a little bit of polish. But the level of discourse, I mean, we're talking again, we start out with this garbage language is infecting the culture. You're she says to Tina Knowles, who's by the way plugging not just her memoir, but which she brags about, it's hit number one on the New York Times bestseller list. I think Jay-Z bought those copies in bulk. Just saying.
Yeah.
Make sure Tina hits.
Earl Spencer knows something about that. Allegedly, allegedly, allegedly. It's like what you can just buy copies of your own book and then put them
Mhm,
in your own little stores or distribute them or do
mhm.
contests or whatever. It's allegedly what some other people do too.
And by
Allegedly.
the way, when these people go on to hotspot shows such as The View and Whoopi turns and magisterially says, and you're all going home with a copy, those count as book sales. Those
Yeah.
count as book sales. So there's all kinds of way to goose that stuff. But she says to her, oh, she's also promoting a hair care line, and it's called Sacred, but it's spelled in a very weird way. So like when you look at it, there's this huge disconnect. You're like, what is this? It's called like begins like C and then an E with an accent over the E and then a C and then an R. You would never know what this is. And Megan says to Tina Knowles early on, like, out of authenticity comes originality. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, and then she goes on the bulk of this really Megan talking about how great she is and how great as ever is.
Oh, I know. Well, let's talk about that because she dropped a few more bombs. Like she's talking about pausing as ever, and Beyonce's mom is like, because that's truly who she was talking to. I'm sure Tina's great in her own right, but this she wouldn't have been
She's
talking
Beyonce's
to this.
mom.
She's Beyonce's mom.
Yeah.
Okay. So Megan's talking about as ever, and Tina says to her, but then what do you do then? Talking about Megan selling out as ever. And Megan says, and then you say, okay, we planned as best as we could. Are we going to replenish and sell out again in an hour? Or is that annoying as a customer? Megan, you and I both know that Meghan Markle doesn't think about anyone but herself. So to try to play this all like she's taking a pause for the consumer when she basically made Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth's lives a living
Mm-hmm.
hell for the last
Mm-hmm.
few months, weeks, days of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Meghan says, I'm looking at it saying, just pause. That happened. Let's wait until we're completely stable and we have everything we need. Speaking about selling out her products, Meghan said, that scarcity mentality, which we've talked about, that's all this is. She had 10 pots of jam
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
sale
Mm-hmm.
and then goes,
Mm-hmm.
I sold out in 10 minutes. At the beginning might be a hook for people, but it's similar to a sneaker drop. I don't when you're talking about products, I don't want you to eat that jam once every 6 months. I want it to be on your shelf all the time. This person is crazy.
Kinsey, give yourself some credit. That is a front to back multi-level quote. There's multiple sentences that she actually said on her show. And she contradicted herself in the beginning. She says, "We sold out. We did the best we could." Again, this is such millennial garbage. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter that you did the best you could if you fail.
Participation trophy. Participation trophy.
Participate, right. That means nothing. And if that is indeed the best you can do, then you are a failure. And then she says, they want to think about, like, is it annoying if things sell out and you can't? Well, usually a manufacturer has a sense and they'll have stuff in the pipeline to replenish. Again, she would be booted out of Shark Tank in 30 seconds. Then she uses the phrase, I loved the sneaker drop because she's a cool royal, Kenzie. She's the royal who gets what a sneaker drop is. She's the
LL
royal
Cool
who knows who,
J.
like, Tyler, the creator is. Don't mess around with her. She's cool. And then she goes, I want that jam on your shelf forever. Like, I want you to keep buying it. So which is it?
Yeah.
Which is it? Are we dropping it? Are we recontinuing it? She was shocked that products that she again, we're using fancy C-suite words. She uses the word consumables. Products rather that are consumables. So be they hair care products that go on your scalp or food that you ingest have to go through approval process, like with the FDA. Like, you got to get that stuff approved. Like, she's a true idiot. She's an idiot.
She is. And again, like I know I've said this to you before, but a lot of the time I feel like her main goal when she sits down and does any sort of media whatsoever, including her own, like she's sitting here talking to Beyonce's mother all about
Mhm.
herself. It feels like her ultimate objective is to respond to you, to me. She is responding to her critics throughout this podcast, justifying stepping back from the jam business, trying to justify all, there's a lot of criticism happening now here in America, over in the UK, about her having all this momentum. It's fun. I saw the Daily Beast, their headline was Meghan steps back from weird jam business. I mean, she's getting knocked
Whoa.
around. Yeah, she's getting knocked around about this decision. So she gets the opportunity to talk to Beyonce's mom and uses the entire episode to then justify some of her actions. It feels like they spend so much time obsessing over their critics, and their actions show us that. I mean, I might just be big-headed and assume that everything she says is to me, but why waste a podcast episode talking about your recent decisions when you have somebody there, Beyonce's mom or not, that has money in the bank because she's accomplished something?
She's a total narcissist, number one. So there's really a real, like, you can hear the strain in her voice when she's trying to feign interest in what somebody else has to say or what somebody else's, I'll use a Megan phrase, lived experiences. Experience is just experience.
Yeah.
If you're alive, you're having experiences.
Yeah.
But it's a real stretch for her to do it. It's painful. You can hear it in her voice, and she also, what we don't talk about is Solange, who was known on the internet at the height of Beyonce's real fame, because she's not really as relevant anymore. Her tour is struggling mightily. Those seats are not selling. Nobody wants to see this tour. But Solange used to be known as Basement Baby, as the Knowles sister who was kept in the basement. She wasn't as hot, she wasn't as cool, she wasn't as talented, and so Tina Knowles, Beyonce's mom, talks about how there's a 5-year gap, between the two of them. Beyonce's the elder, and that she never really had to worry about Beyonce because Beyonce was off doing her own thing, which she was not doing her own thing. She was being groomed by her parents to become a global superstar. Okay. Solange was not. So she had to really try to pay a little more attention to Solange and make sure Solange didn't fall through the cracks. And she talks about how this, I died, Kinsey, I died. One day a week was Solange's day. Solange's day. So Wednesdays were Solange's day. And that was
Hump
when Tina
day.
would spend great point, hump day, the day everybody's just like, let's get over to the weekend. It's like the grueling day that we're stuck in the middle. And so that's that she's talking like this is a great thing. And what's really clear to me at least is that those other 6 days are Beyonce's days. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the money maker. It's all the money, it's all going there. It's so effed up. And like, but Megan's sitting there going, wow. What, as if she's again like raising these children on her own, which I believe there's an army of nannies taking care of that, but
Yeah. No, Megan is now like, Archie gets hump day. Poor Archie.
yeah.
Let's talk about this Brooke Shields revelation on this is India's podcast, a lady Pamela Mountbatten. She was the lady in
Mm.
waiting to Queen Elizabeth II, and her father. So it's India Hicks. Her father is the late interior designer David Hicks. India is beautiful. I've seen her elsewhere. This is the first podcast episode I've listened to, though. She's very proud of her parents' history, and I see her in documentaries sometimes talking about it. So she's got Brooke Shields on the show, and it's hilarious to me because to me it justifies a lot of our criticism. Brooke is talking about how she interrupted Meghan during their South by Southwest panel last year because she just needed to lighten the mood. And Brooke says Meghan starts telling a story about how when she was 11, and she keeps saying, well, when I was 11, I saw this commercial and they were talking about washing dishes, and only soap for washing dishes was for women. By the way, you're going to have to retire that story if you're going to brand yourself around a show where you spend the majority of your time in the damn kitchen. Okay, Meghan Markle. So Brooke says, and she said, I didn't think only women washed the dishes. It wasn't fair. So I wrote the company, and I was like, I was 11. I wrote my first letter when I was 11. And she kept saying she was 11. She wrote to the company. They changed the text. They changed the commercial. And at one point, Brooke said she couldn't resist breaking the tension in the room because we've all heard the damn story by now. Even everybody sitting in Austin, Texas has heard Meghan's dish soap story. And she says, excuse me, I'm so sorry. I've got to interrupt you there for 1 minute. She said, I was trying not to be rude, but I just wanted to be funny because it was so serious. I just wanted to give everybody here some context as to how we're different. I said, well, when I was 11, I was playing a prostitute and the place went insane. You and I have talked so much about Meghan is beautiful and she married Prince Harry, but Meghan is not box office. Meghan does not know how to entertain. Meghan is not necessarily funny. She's not necessarily interesting. And there's not really anything special about her other than the fact that she found a prince willing to marry her. And Brooke Shields isn't saying that, but I hear that in this story. Like, I had to interrupt. I had to bring some joy. I had to, oh, I'm sorry, Megan ruined that word for all of us. But she's just saying, like, I had to interrupt and I had to bring some personality to and some authenticity because we've heard this story. And it's like, doesn't it prove to you Meghan doesn't know entertainment. She doesn't know Hollywood, and she doesn't know how to get, first of all, to get a sense for what the audience wants and then give that to them.
There's so much here. First of all, that story is not fully true. That was a class project. This
Yeah.
was not an auto-generated idea out of the genius mind of one 11-year-old Meghan freaking Markle, who I think was probably going by Rachel back then, her birth
Yeah.
name, her government name. So then she tells this story front to back with all the details. We are all collectively bored to tears with this. Give us something else, but she doesn't really have anything else because, as you said, she's not that interesting. I heard this story and I thought, Brooke Shields, as far as celebrities go, seems pretty likable. I watched that documentary about her, and it was produced by her friends, so it was very lovingly done, George Stephanopoulos and his wife Allie. But that she survived and is intact and has a sense of humor and can crack a joke like that because she was sexualized from a lot younger than 11
Mm-hmm.
by a stage mother who makes Tina Knowles look like a day in the park. I'm not saying Tina Knowles, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
you get to
Yeah.
meet Beyonce. Sacrifices were made. Um, So, yeah, and she tells this joke, and you just know that Meghan was seething with rage, like seething, because it's funny, it's self-deprecating, it livened the crowd right out of their collective coma. Self-deprecation is one of the most winning qualities someone can exhibit. If you can make fun of yourself, it shows you have a very healthy ego, and you can move about in the world without needing, a bubble around you at all times, which she frankly does. And she must have been feeling the energy. We all really realized how much an audience matters during COVID. When we would watch these sporting events without a crowd or performances without a crowd, and you realize what a significant amount of energy a crowd brings to a room and that athletes feed off of or performers feed off of. And you know that Meghan had to be feeling that audience losing interest rapidly, like free falling, like Tom Cruise out of a plane. Just they're done. They don't want to hear it. They're bored. She's got nothing else. And it always astonishes me because she's like Kamala Harris in this way. I'm not trying to politicize it, but it's like you have so much money and access that you could pay writers to come in and write jokes for you and write anecdotes and workshop that stuff and polish it and then rehearse it so that you can at least seem like a human being. She doesn't want to do it. She knows everything.
You're right. You're right. Imagine if she made jokes about not fitting in, or imagine if she made jokes about getting kicked out of somewhere or something. I mean, it would be hard for people like us to acknowledge that it was clever, but we would have to do it. But she just is she it's her way or the highway, and she thinks that her and Prince Harry are the smartest people in the room. God help us all.
Agreed. I think back to Daniel, episode 1 of With Love, Megan, who frankly almost cowered in fear when her back was turned and he dared to take a tiny taste of something before and she whipped around and you could see the fear in his eyes and you could see her immediately go, I have to pretend to be playful, like that was a fun moment, like that's a moment between friends and not like I'm gonna take you out to the woodshed and you're gonna lose a limb for daring to screw up my perfect kitchen. I mean, we're getting season 3 and I'm dying to know who she's submitted asks to. We talked last week, you had that great scoop about Dolly Parton saying no. Chrissy Teigen, that great bully, that other bully, is in season 2, whatever they're calling season 2. It's really season 1,
Yeah.
part B. But yeah, who's she gonna get?
I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm truly at a loss thinking you are so right. How does she not have somebody that just writes little quips for her? I mean, I've done reality. I did reality with Diddy. I remember they handed me a piece of paper, and because Diddy specifically had like 20 different names, I had to say, we're really excited for P. Diddy to come to the party tonight. We're really excited for Diddy to come to the party tonight. We're really excited for Sean to come to the party tonight, because we didn't know at the time that they actually edited this what he was going to go by. But they would hand you something, and you, like, during the confessional or the confessional shot where it's just you and the camera, and then they would be like, here, we wrote this joke for you, say this clever thing. And I don't know, it'd be something about 50 Cent or the card not wanting to upset Khloe Kardashian because we're throwing parties for all these people. And that is the way that it normally works. Or I remember recording a joke for an E special. And then when I went back and watched the E special, Melissa Rivers delivered that joke.
Hmm.
That's the way that this stuff works. They could, Netflix, you could make Meghan more, likable. You could make Meghan likable. I do think that at the end of the day, though, she runs the show. And if that's not her idea, she's not willing to do that. But that is exactly what that show is missing. Even if it doesn't look like it fits into the scene, they could do a close-up shot of her saying something that is at even remotely interesting or funny, and that would make the show better. But because it all is her, it's so cringe. There's no personality whatsoever. There are no light moments. It's just so forced and painful.
You're so right about all that stuff. You can tell on reality shows, especially when it's a great reality star doesn't necessarily have to be smart, and sometimes it's better off if they're not. But you can tell when they make a particularly witty observation or say something genuinely funny that was scripted for them. I think that it's a true art form. Being a great reality star is a true art form. And to that point, Kinsey, I'm just curious because I don't think we've ever talked about that. When did you do that show with Diddy, and how did you find him to be?
I did it when I was 23, and I'm 40 now, so it's
Okay.
quite a long time ago. And I was terrified of him, but he had that making the band persona where it was like,
Yes.
disappoint Diddy, don't, he had very high expectations, very unrealistic expectations. I was chosen along with my friend Brett to throw this party for him in Cabo San Lucas. He flew a bunch of friends out. This was for Ciroc vodka, and the party was on a beach. Of course, that just adds a million more problems of getting tables right on the beach,
Hmm.
erecting a tent. I remember we had a band didn't show up, and I had to tell him, and I was just terrified of telling him that the band didn't show up. But then I made sure the DJ was playing Earth, Wind, and Fire while I told him, so he would be in a good mood, because who doesn't like Earth, Wind, and Fire?
So
Um,
smart.
but I was scared of him, but and I remember my ultimate objective, the show was because you were trying to win a job full time planning celebrity events. But I was hoping that he would love me and give me a full time job. And now watching this trial, oh
Yeah.
my, be careful what you wish for. I am so glad, because I remember also Nick Cannon, the producers were begging Nick Cannon to offer me a job because the producers all loved me and I lost. I didn't win. Brett
Mhm.
won, but everybody was begging Nick Cannon to give me a job too. And I'm just like, thank God that things
Yeah,
didn't
you'd be
go my
tending to
way.
one of his 20 kids. But how interesting is that you're surrounded by cameras and a crew. Things that are recording. So you should ostensibly feel safe, but you felt frightened by him.
Yeah,
Frightened. You were terrified to tell him that a band dropped out. Like,
right.
or that like a table would be askew on shifting sands.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, it all worked out as it should because now you're here, like having these incredibly entertaining, informative conversations. You live to tell the tale. But could you imagine if you had found yourself in Diddy's world? That would not have been good for you.
No, not at
No.
all. And I did an interview this week with Court TV, and they were talking about Capricorn, and how
Yes.
and just how she there were so many horrific instances where you would assume, and goes to Bill Maher's point, Bill Maher's
Hmm.
conversation too. As a normal person, I think we sit back and we go, why didn't you walk away then? But when you are so green and you are obsessed with your dreams, and you are so afraid that Diddy can destroy, no matter all of the hard work you've put in over the last few years, there is one person out there that can make sure you never work again.
Yep.
You're paralyzed. Like, you're just trying to work. You just want to make your dreams come true. And you've built up this resume with him, and now he can make sure no one in this industry ever hires you again. So I think it's unfair for people to criticize the people that stayed on after some of the horrible things that happened, because they feel so stuck. And Diddy can make one phone call and make sure that you never work in this industry again. And then what are you supposed to do when you've invested all this time in this one industry?
Exactly. We've heard so many actresses say the same thing about Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
He blackballed me. He told people I was crazy. I was too difficult to work with. Like, don't go near her. And careers died in their cradle. And the thing too, the Capricorn, so she was one of his personal assistants. And the other thing that, there were grown men who testified who have been testifying in this trial, that men twice the size of Diddy, men who frankly could take him out back and do a number on him, who said they had to stand there and watch him beat Cassie, because he said, excuse my language, I'll kill you. I'll
Yeah.
kill you. I'll kill your family members. He threatened people. I mean, if we want to really go back and if he gets convicted and these cases should really, really be reopened, I bet you there's a lot of dirty cops involved. And I think that's why they've never been solved. Biggie and Tupac,
Oh
I
my
think it was
gosh.
Diddy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, that is a serious conversation that's happening today, which I never imagined. I mean, think about all the money he
Yep.
made off, although he has to send Sting quite a bit of cash daily. Think about
Yep.
all the money he made off of the death of Biggie because he completely monetized that. All right, well, I've taken up too much of your time already, but
Never,
I'm
never.
so glad we got to catch up today. And you can head on over right after this and watch Maureen's The Nerve on her YouTube channel, The Nerve with Maureen Callahan. And I look forward to seeing what you guys discuss next. I'm really enjoying the content so far.
Oh, thanks, Kinsey. Thank you. And thanks for coming on the show too and being such a great, supportive, just friend and cheerleader. I never take it for granted when you give me your free time. And I
Oh my
love talking to you. So
I love talking to you too. We've gone off topic like 12 times, but I enjoyed this conversation more than every
same.
other conversation. We've got Diddy, we've got JFK Jr., we've got it all on this episode.
All of it. So fun. Who
Uh,
thought? I never thought we'd start with JFK Jr. and end with Diddy, but there
oh
you
my,
go.
I know. Also, we have to figure out, remember that last week, I haven't done enough investigations into this, but we've got to figure out who the donor is that donated to one of Diddy's causes and Harry and Meghan's.
Oh my God. That is a great thread to pull on. Great thread. Do you have any theories?
I truly not at this point in time. Not at this point. I mean, Kardashian. I mean, I don't know. Not at this point in time. No,
I don't think it's a Kardashian because they have been keeping their distance
they have. That's
well and truly. The two theories going around about who the momager would be on her special podcast drop, it was either Kris Jenner or Beyonce's mom. And I was like, there's no way it's Kris Jenner. She's too smart. She's staying away from that mess.
right. That also for Meghan to interview Tina right now with the Diddy stuff going on because Jay-Z loved Diddy, and
Yes.
that to
They were
me
like
was
this.
that was also strange to me that Meghan would welcome that kind of attention, but she's smarter
She
than
just
that.
pretends inconvenient things. She just pretends they don't exist. It's people go through life like that to a point and then they hit a brick wall.
Never complain, never explain, only when it's convenient to you. But judge the royal family when they do it, when it's related to you. All right, agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this conversation with a friend. Thanks so much, Maureen Callahan. I love you.
Love you too, Kinsey. Thanks again.